Picky,
Okay.
picky.
Gosh, you guys. Oh gosh, I hate seeing myself. Okay, we don't want that. I don't like that.
So did you just stop your share? No.
I didn't do anything. It just
I've
did
got
it
your
to me.
panel, so
I love Vicky's picture. Okay, that's the one we want. Okay, good. All right. All right. So macronutrients, large amounts. So it's carbs, protein, and fat, the things we generally always talk about. So we know carbs are our fruits and veggies and our grains and our beans, a big part of our diet. Then our protein would be our beans and nuts and seeds, and fats would be like, it could be oils and things, but in a whole food plant-based diet, we want it to be whole real food, like avocados or olives, the things that make the oil, nuts and seeds. Now, micronutrients we need in smaller amounts. So, and usually micronutrients and water are lumped together. So micronutrients are our vitamins and minerals. So they help us to get calories. It says energy here, and energy is code for calories from our macronutrients, or the foods that we eat. And we need vitamins for lots of functions in our body. There are 13 vitamins. We need to actually consume the vitamins because our body doesn't make them. And you might wonder why sometimes, like, there's vitamins A, B, and C, and D, and E, but then there's no F, but then there's like a K. So it's because when they got all gung-ho about figuring out vitamins, they just started calling everything a vitamin. And then they realized that, so there probably was an L and an M and an N, but there aren't now, because they realized those weren't truly vitamins. They didn't meet the definition because our body could actually make them. Vitamins our body cannot make. And then there's minerals. So minerals are generally the structures of our body. Bless you, like our bones and teeth are full of calcium. So those are minerals in our body. They're also found in our fluids, and there are 16 minerals. And then water, we need water for pretty much anything we do. We know we can't survive very long without water, and our body's about 60% water. So we're not going to talk too much about water today. It's really going to be more about the vitamins and minerals. So to get all these micronutrients or all these vitamins and minerals that we want, and when we're eating whole foods, not food products, meaning you're eating the plant, it wasn't made in a plant. So you eat whole real foods, because you lose a lot of micronutrients when they process the heck out of things. So when we're eating whole real fruits and vegetables and beans and nuts and seeds and intact whole grains, bless you, meaning it's a grain that is how it grew. It's not super processed. Like oats are a great whole grain. When we turn it into Cheerios, it's still okay. I mean, we can still eat it, but we do lose a lot by turning it into Cheerios. Herbs and spices are also whole real foods. So this is what we want to have be the biggest part of how we eat. How do you guys think you do with that? Think we're getting from these foods? And I know we're not perfect every day, but this is where we want to head to. So in the vitamin world, and sorry, we're going to get a little chemistry class-ish here today. So we got vitamins, and then we got two types of vitamins, water soluble and fat soluble. So meaning the water soluble ones, meaning if you take it in a supplement form and you didn't need all that, you're going to pee it out. Fat soluble vitamins, they're going to store in our fat. So our fat soluble vitamins are vitamin A, D, E, and K. That's it. And we need all these. We need them all. The water soluble would be vitamin C. That's by itself. And then we have the B vitamins, which have lots of fancy names. So you've heard probably these names, thiamine and riboflavin, niacin, biotin, down to B12. So those are our B vitamins. And again, they don't just go B1 through B12. We lose a few in the translation that really weren't truly vitamins. And then we've got minerals. So we've got two different categories of minerals too. We've got major minerals, meaning they're a big part of our bodies. And you can see you got sodium, potassium, calcium, you know, that's our bones and teeth. And then you got trace minerals, still equally as important, but you don't need them as huge amounts, just smaller amounts. So I mean, didn't want to talk about all the vitamins and minerals. So I just kind of picked a few, especially ones that people are more concerned with a whole food plant-based diet or with certain disease states. I left this here, and you can, if you click on that, or if you go to that website, what it will do is you'll put in your age and your height and weight, and then it'll tell you exactly how much you need from all those things. And it's interesting, but you know, we don't need to count all this stuff. It's too overwhelming. So if we are eating a whole food plant-based diet, a variety of foods every day, we're likely going to get all the nutrients that we need. And if you wonder about something, you think, gosh, am I getting enough vitamin D? Ask your doctor to check that, because we don't want to be taking supplements if we don't really need them. And sometimes your doctor might have checked your vitamin D. You were low. They gave you some vitamin D to bring it up. And now maybe you don't need that supplement anymore. We don't want to be taking supplements unless we really need them. We can mostly get everything we need right from our food. And what's the one exception for a whole food plant-based diet that we have to take a supplement?
B12.
B12. And they do supplement some foods with it, or they fortify foods with it. But just to be careful, you don't want to mess around with that. It's good to take a B12 supplement. And people over the age of 50, they're starting to recommend they take one too. I think we'll have a slide on that. Okay, so here's the ones we're going to talk about today. B12, vitamin D. Everybody's heard of vitamin D, right? Everybody's all a buzz about that. Calcium, iron, zinc, iodine, and magnesium. Those are the big ones we're going to talk about. Those first 6 are the ones that sometimes come up when you're thinking you're on a whole food plant-based diet. I wonder if I'm going to get enough of that. And you really, truly can if you have a good diet, that's good variety, that's a lot of whole, real foods. And you might think, well, and the people have argued this with me, well, you know, if I ate a meat diet, I'm getting all the nutrients I need. And so why would I go on a diet where I might have to be a little low in something? Well, I would argue that point. I would argue that if you're on an unhealthy meat-based diet, you're not getting your vitamin C. You might not be getting your calcium. You're missing stuff too, but you are getting plenty of iron. I'll give you that. So I don't want you to think, oh, I should be on this other kind of diet because, you know, I might have to worry about it. We don't have to worry about these things if we're getting a whole real food diet with lots of food, lots of variety. Okay, so I'm starting with the B12. All my slides are kind of similar in that I say like how much you're supposed to have, what they do, who's at risk, what happens if you get deficient, and then a few little interesting tidbits. So B12, the RDA, the recommended dietary allowance, is what the USDA has come up with for us, how much we need of these things. And they put a lot of extra. There's a lot of cushioning in there. So if some days you're a little low, no big deal. You're going to get a little more the next day. So this is sort of on average, and it's 2.4, and that little UG is a microgram, super tiny amount. And B12 is super important because it helps with making our red blood cells, which we need. It helps forming our DNA. It helps with our nerve function, particularly that nerve function. Hold that thought. So who's at risk for being low in B12? Vegans, because we don't eat, it comes only from animal foods, or it comes from like bacteria, or it grows on certain things, but we don't always get that. So vegans generally, and then the elderly, because as we get older, we don't digest it and absorb it like we used to. So that's why the elderly, that's why they really recommend as people get older, especially at 50 and above, that they take a B12 supplement. So if you don't have enough B12, remember on our list of vitamins, we had water soluble and fat soluble. So the B vitamins are water soluble, meaning that we tend to pee out extra. But we do have some storage of B12. It's a little different. So we do have some. And we can go years and years without having any B12 and live off our stores, but eventually we might get a little low. So then we get a little tingling, like in our fingers or our feet, maybe some numbness, maybe we get super tired, maybe some memory loss. So remember, this is helping with our nerve function. So we need our nerves to jump from one nerve to the next. And in doing that, our nerves have this little covering called a myelin sheath. And so we need that in place for our nerves to do the right jumping. And so we can maybe have some memory loss and also falling. Frequent falls is a big sign that we better check our B12. I mean, unless there's valid reasons for our falling, like, oh, I have this carpet in my house and it always curls up, and so I trip over it, which we should not have in any of our houses. My mom just insists on having this carpet in her house, and I keep saying that is a fall just waiting to happen, but she still insists. So falls mean that nerve conduction isn't doing what it quite should. So we could be low in B12. Now, a lot of people are on metformin. It's a drug for diabetes. It's also called glucophage. And what they found is metformin may lower our B12. So they recommend, if you are on metformin, because people are on it for years and years and years and years, that about at least every 3 years, you check your B12. It's not made by plants or animals, B12. So it's only by these microbes. So you're really never sure if you're getting it, like were the right microbes on this thing that you're eating. So that's why we really do recommend fortified foods or animal products. So they might fortify it, say, if you get a plant milk, they fortify it in that. But we might not really get enough. So really what they recommend for a whole food plant-based diet is 2,000 micrograms a week, which I know sounds like a crazy amount compared to we only need 2.4, but we don't absorb all of it. And it's called cyancobalamin. That's the one we want. And if you're over 65, they're recommending 1,000 micrograms a day. And the last time I did this, I was under 65 and wasn't all that worried about it. But now that I'm 67, I need to up my dose.
So is that just an automatic guideline, or do they want a B12 level before they are recommending?
That's just an automatic guideline. Yes. Yeah. They don't necessarily need one. But I asked my doctor, since I'm on a whole food plant-based diet, to check it every year. And one thing I've learned is they don't always automatically do these things. So you got to be your own advocate and say, hey, I've been following this plant-based diet. Will you check my B12? And then sometimes we do it, and then because we're taking the supplement and our B12 is way too high. So then maybe we don't need to take quite so much. So that's why we do keep checking it. And I don't know, when I worked at Sutter, that metformin every 3 years wasn't always automatic unless people were in the Department of Diabetes. Your regular primary care might not be aware or do that regularly. So be your own advocate and ask for that.
Yeah, can you ask the same thing? You get under
Sure.
I mean, you don't have to say you're complete, because I'm not a complete. I strive with
Well, we've got a combination too. We're getting older, and we're eating more plants, less animals. So yeah, I think it's very valid. I don't think it's an expensive test or anything. Yeah, it's something different. So you have to ask for them to do this one separate.
My primary care every couple of years does a B12 and the vitamin D. She knows it on plant-based.
Exactly. Mine does too now.
So she automatically, it's part of her analysis of the goal.
Yeah.
It's not even, I don't have to say a word. It's about time for your B12 D look.
That's great. You know, to those of you out there, John was saying that his doctor automatically every few years checks his B12 and his vitamin D because they know his lifestyle is whole food plant-based, and that's automatic for them to do. My doctor is a lifestyle medicine doctor. I go to Kaiser, and she does it pretty automatically too, especially now that I'm on Medicare. She does it. And I take a B12 supplement. I do a sublingual So it's super easy. You just stick it under your tongue. Tastes like a little candy.
Tastes off.
Oh, mine tastes really good. Mine's cherry.
Sublingual, it goes right into the capillary. Better than getting a shot in the butt.
Oh, there you go.
Anybody, any of you out here who have digestive problems, you're gonna have, especially if you're taking Pepsid or any proton pump inhibitors, those are gonna block certain vitamin absorption that starts in the stomach before it gets down into the intestines.
Good point.
So there is another possible complication.
That is true. If you have GI things, you're right. And for people who have had weight loss surgery,
Yes.
they have to be very careful about their micronutrients and their vitamins and minerals. And so some things like a B12, they might have to take a shot as opposed to taking it orally because of digestive changes. Let's see. Calcium. The RDA is 1,200 milligrams. That's for the ladies, and men. Oh no, I think that's for everybody, 1,200. But men, when you're between 51 and 70, they say 1,000. You maybe don't need quite so much. So with calcium, another important one, 99% of the calcium that's in our body is in our bones and teeth. 1% is in our bloodstream, and it has like life and death jobs. So it does muscle contraction, it helps with nerve function like our B12 does, it helps with clotting, and it helps with blood pressure. So what happens is if we're not getting adequate calcium in our diet, and we have this whole savings account in our bones, and so our blood says, hey, we need to have a little bit more, and so it takes a withdrawal from our savings account, and long-term withdrawals from our savings account end up being weak, brittle bones, which is osteoporosis. So we're at risk for deficiency at different times of our life, but you know, generally it's when you're growing, you need a little bit more calcium. When you are going through puberty, as we age, we need a little bit more, and the elderly are more at risk. Low calcium and vitamin D intake makes you more at risk. A sedentary lifestyle makes you more at risk because when you exercise and put weight on those bones, that helps to build your bones up. And if you're a lady, we're at risk too. So more so than the males, but males get osteoporosis too.
Yeah, I have osteopenia.
Penia?
Mild form of that.
Yes. Yes.
So that's a problem I was diagnosed with when we see disease.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So osteopenia, thank you for saying that because I recently just got that diagnosis also, which really irritated me.
It's no fun.
It is not, but that's kind of like pre-osteoporosis. So one thing about getting your calcium, because you can say, well, if I'm eating plant-based, how am I going to get my calcium? Because we all think you got to get it from milk, right? But we don't. And so food sources, I'm going to drop to the bottom first. Dairy products are actually an excellent source, but the studies haven't really shown that people who consume a lot of dairy products have any less bone fracture or hip fracture than people who don't. But it's in a lot of plant-based foods. I'll have a slide on that in a minute. Some people argue we don't really need to get that 1,200. I don't know where I stand on that. They say to aim for at least 600 milligrams a day. But where we're going to get it is from our greens, dark green leafies, broccoli. But notice what I said above there, our note. Oxalates are in dark greens, and they may inhibit the absorption of calcium. So kale, collards, mustard greens are all, the calcium is really well absorbed. Spinach, chard, beet greens are not as well absorbed. So it's important. That doesn't mean those aren't good. I mean, Popeye says you have good, strong bone muscles from spinach, and that is very true because it's got a lot of iron in it. But have a combination. Don't just only eat kale because you're going to get, I mean, you could, but, or don't only eat spinach. I got to say, spinach is sort of like a gateway green, I think, to get you into kale. And so if we're only having that, we might not getting as much calcium as we could. So have a combination. So in my winter garden, I have kale and spinach and beet greens and chard. So this morning, when I was making my oatmeal, I went out and got a little leaf of each to throw into my oatmeal.
But what about broccoli?
Broccoli's good.
I know
You just need a lot.
Yes. Yeah, and you know, with broccoli it gives me a ton of gas. That's
It could.
Unfortunately, I love broccoli. I like it mixed with, you know, other winter.
Right. So, but the small amounts, if you're going to have it, you could start with small. Here shows how much calcium is in certain plant-based foods. So a lot of your plant milks are going to be fortified. It says 300 here. And generally, if you have a cup of milk, regular cow's milk, you're going to get about 300 too. And then there's your greens in the next one. You need a cup of cooked greens to get 200. And tofu, some tofu is in its making it into a little cake, a little square. They set it with something that has calcium in it. Blackstrap molasses. I don't know why that they have that as opposed to regular molasses. So there's probably some really great reason. 100 milligrams would be like our soy, this is instant oatmeal that's in the little packets, which I don't highly recommend anyway. Almond butter or tahini, that's made from sesame seeds. Bok choy is a great one. Edamame, tempeh, which is a fermented soybean. And then we move less and less. Dried figs, TVP, textured vegetable protein, chia seeds. And then there's our broccoli. So to get equal to our greens, you need to have 4 cups. Could that be? Yes, if I did the math right, of broccoli. Some beans, oranges, almonds, flax. So the thing is, if we're getting a variety of foods, we're going to do okay in our calcium. Yes.
Is it better to eat the raw vegetables as opposed to maybe steamed or boiled? And can you cook out the good calcium or?
Thank you for asking that. Because so the question is, can you cook out the calcium? And no, that's the thing with minerals, is they are very hard to kill. So you can't really cook them out, but you can cook out your vitamin C and some of your other vitamins. But minerals, you can't kill them.
I just made a big pot of kale and collards.
Perfect.
A couple of days ago. And, you know, I cooked them all, kind of forgot about them on the stove.
Yeah.
And I thought, did I ruin them? You know, because I wanted to mix them with other foods. And then I saved the juice.
Perfect.
I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. It's in the refrigerator.
Don't they call that liquor or something that's in your green liquor?
So
Pot liquor. There you go.
So I didn't ruin it.
No, you might have lost some vitamin C, but especially if you're using something with that liquid in it, or you're putting it into like a soup, you're going to still get it.
That was my idea.
Yeah, but heat and light and liquid can cause you to lose some of those water soluble vitamins.
So is broccoli, I remember reading somewhere that broccoli is always healthy, but it's often like a diuretic.
Broccoli?
I'm trying to find it.
Lose fluid? Oh, I've not heard that, but that doesn't mean it's not true, but I've not heard that. If you find it, let me know. Yeah. No, I don't think so. I don't know. Okay, here's vitamin D. We all hear about vitamin D all the time. It seems it's like it's associated with every disease you could possibly ever have. The RDA is 15 milligrams if you're between 51 and 70. When we get a little older, we need even a little more, 20 milligrams. It helps with our bone health by helping absorb our calcium and keep our calcium in line. If you don't have enough, you get bone loss. It's called osteomalacia. And it was what we call rickets in kids. Remember when kids would get rickets and their legs would bow because their bones would not be strong enough to hold their weight back at the turn of the century. So there's vitamin D2 and D3. D2 is generally plant-based because D3 is usually made from lanolin, which is from sheep. But they do have, oh, it says that. But they do make a vegan D3. I get a vegan D3 and I do take this one like every other day, so to speak. My vitamin D was okay when I had it checked a year or two ago. So I just take it like every other day, just in case, because I don't know that I get ample calcium rich foods. I get it on Amazon and it's not all very expensive. So where you get D is in the sunlight. See, that's the thing. As we get older, that's why our risk goes up, is because normally when you're a kid and you're out in the sun, that sun hits your skin and there's a reaction that occurs that creates vitamin D. Well, nowadays, do we go out and get a lot of sunlight without slathering up with our sunscreen? Or we're not out playing all day either, most of us. And there's bad things about that also. So it's in sunlight, it's in fatty fish, eggs, foods that are fortified, and some mushrooms, which we talked about before. And if you have your mushrooms under a UV light, it gives them some vitamin D. And some mushrooms that I bought in the store will say that. Some don't. Like my Rayleigh's brand of mushrooms don't say it. So I don't think we can always count on that. And so how much sunlight would you need? If you're in a latitude, LA or lower, south, 15 minutes a day. If we have darker skin, which is harder to do that conversion, 30 minutes a day. But if we're north like we are, or in the winter months, we really should consider supplementing. And I held out for years on my supplementation. And finally, I just gave in. So 2,000 international units of vitamin D is recommended a day. And I just heard, and I want to say it's every 100 milligrams of vitamin, no, every 1,000 milligrams of vitamin D you take will raise your vitamin D level by, 10 points or something. So if you are low, you say to the doctor, hey, I heard this vitamin D thing, will you check? And then you're low, they're going to give you like a big whopping amount to get you up there. And then you don't need to be on that forever. Then have it rechecked. And when it's normal, switch down to a lower dose. Vitamin D has been associated with many diseases. Everybody just got on the bandwagon, but it may be associated with a slower progression of type 2 diabetes. So that's why we want to maintain a good level also. Oh, here's mushrooms. When they expose them to that UV light, so we're supposed to have, say, 20 micrograms, and then just regular old little white mushrooms hardly have any, but when they're exposed to UV light, they give you your daily allotment. Same with the criminies, same with the portobellos, and same with the maitakes. So I don't know, it's an interesting thought. I don't know, like I've seen them at the store sometimes where it says it has vitamin D, but not always. So iron, recommended dietary allowance, 8 milligrams. This is really important for our red blood cells, carries oxygen to our muscles and tissues, helps us with immunity, keep us from getting sick, helps with making DNA. If you don't have enough iron, you get anemia. And so that's what did we used to call anemia? You remember the Geritol commercials? They had a cute little name for it.
Iron poor blood.
Iron poor blood, I think. So a big sign of anemia is you get tired. You're tired. In fact, I've gone to the doctor and said, I do feel like I'm really tired lately. Will you check my iron? And so I think that's a valid thing to ask. There's heme iron and non-heme iron. Plant iron is non-heme. It's not as readily absorbed as heme iron, which is the kind that's in plants. It just has to do with its chemical structure. That doesn't mean if we're only eating plants, we're not going to get enough iron. We'll do fine. There's another little blocking thing like we had with our calcium, and that's phytates. Phytates are in nuts and seeds and grains. You often think of them in whole grains. They could bind with iron, so then we don't get to absorb it as well. If we eat vitamin C rich foods at really every meal, which would be any fruits or vegetables, they're going to help you absorb the iron better from that meal. So Also, and I don't think I put it here, cooking in a cast iron skillet, which is what I cook in mostly, you do get a little iron from there. And so that helps with the iron in that dish that you're making. Vegetarians tend to store less iron. So sometimes they might have a test and it'll say, hey, you don't have quite as much iron. But it actually might be good because iron can be considered a pro-oxidant. You know, we're all about the antioxidant, but pro-oxidants can cause some problems, especially as we get older. That's why when you switch from your regular multivitamin to your Centrum Silver, it doesn't have iron in it because those pro-oxidants cannot be good for our heart. So it might be okay that we're not storing quite so much. And the studies haven't shown that people who are plant-based end up having more anemia. Coffee, tea, and calcium can decrease your absorption. So if you happen to be taking your, I don't know, I take a multivitamin with iron. And so I shouldn't be swallowing that down with my tea or a glass of milk, which I don't. So sources of iron for plant-based people are going to be beans and legumes, whole grains. Also, it's in a lot of fortified cereals like Cheerios has iron in it. Total, which has, 100% of 18 vitamins and minerals, has iron in it. So they fortify a lot of foods with it. But I think if we're getting plenty of plant-based beans, legumes, we're getting our dark green leafies, which I didn't put here, but that's got iron in it too. I don't know why I didn't put that there. Oh, here's some iron. Okay, in our foods, there's our vegetables, there's our spinach, pretty high. Oats, I don't know. Enriched cereals, so like Total, whole grain, it's got the most because they put it in it. That's why. It didn't come with it. Isn't it funny how many things molasses has? Who eats molasses?
Put it in cookies.
You put it in cookies. That's all you do with molasses, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a very hippie thing, blackstrap especially.
Yeah. It's a kind of a hippy dippy thing. You're right. But it does come in your gingerbread cookies, right? Or
Yeah, it's a ginger.
yeah.
Well, we have molasses cookies as one of the Christmas board.
Okay. Molasses cookies. Okay. So we need 8. So if you look here and you say you have your oatmeal for breakfast, we had some spinach at lunch. We had soy milk on something. We had hot chocolate made with soy milk. We had a little handful of nuts. We threw some raisins in with that. And then we just sprinkled molasses all over it. There. It's really not hard to get our 8. Oops. Zinc. Not one we often think about. The RDA is 11 for men, 8 for women. This helps all the little enzymes in our body to do their jobs. The enzymes help maybe to get the calories out of our food or help reactions to occur. Zinc is important for wound healing. So if you've ever been in the hospital or had a wound, they're going to give you some extra zinc to help with wound healing. It also has to do with our taste perception. So sometimes when people lose their taste, maybe they could be a little lower in zinc. A deficiency, you get more sick, you might lose a little hair, loss of taste and smell. I don't know if during COVID, were people low in zinc? Because I don't know. Half of the zinc intake in the US is from meats though. So that makes us, that's why it came up on our list of whole food plant-based people. Vegetarians need about 50% more than the RDA because of absorptions. And there's our phytates, which are in our grains mostly, inhibit absorption. So where are we going to get our zinc? I think very few people really have a zinc deficiency, but it's in animal foods, it's in our fortified cereals, but there it's just in our mantra. Whole grains, beans, tofu, nuts, and seeds. So if we're eating a wide variety of foods, we're good. And that's funny. That's one I've never had checked, my zinc. Folate, 400 micrograms is what we need. It's important for our DNA synthesis, and it makes new cells like red blood cells. And it also helps to break down something, an amino acid called homocysteine. So what we've learned is that a high level of homocysteine may be associated with heart disease. So we want to keep our homocysteine good. Now, if you were kind of tired, you said, gosh, I think I might be anemic. And then they said, yeah, you're kind of anemic. They're only going to check your iron. But there could be a deficiency from folate too. And so we want our doctors to talk to us about that. So we can get anemia, but it's a different type of anemia than iron deficiency anemia. Makes you tired, weak. It's associated with neural tube defects, which for pregnant women is when babies are born without, say, their spinal cord, like spina bifida, or without a brain. So because of these neural tube defects, they started fortifying our grains, our flours, with homocysteine. And in doing that, I think that was in the 90s. In doing that, we have had fewer neural tube defects. But that's also why women of childbearing years should always be taking folate, because they don't, they might not always know when they get pregnant. They want to make sure they are getting adequate folate, especially in those first 8 weeks of pregnancy when these neural tube defects could occur. So where are we going to get it? It's really easy to get plenty of folate. It's in foliage. It's in our greens. It's in lettuce, spinach. It's in some beans. There's our broccoli, lentils, asparagus. It's in pretty much all our plant foods. Well, except for fruit. Oh no, it's got mango. And then iodine, another one we don't always think about, but if you don't get enough iodine, you get a goiter. And I remember in school, you probably remember too, all the big pictures of the people with big goiters. That's when it means your thyroid slows down a little bit. Because of this, they started fortifying salt. So when you get the blue thing with the girl with the umbrella, that's iodized salt. The thing is, nowadays, we don't all eat that salt. We're trying to cut back on salt, and now we want fancy salts. And so those aren't iodized. Or if you get a lot of foods from a restaurant, they don't use iodized salt generally. So we need this to make sure our thyroid's doing okay, to help with growth, to help with our metabolic rate. Because if your thyroid is sluggish, sometimes we don't burn as many calories and we tend to put on a little weight. So where do we get it besides our iodized salt? It's in seafood, it's in dairy, but it's in these sea vegetables. Who here eats a sea vegetable now and then?
I use it when I cook beans.
When you cook beans, you throw what is that stuff?
The combo.
The combo, yeah.
On the right,
yes.
it floats on the top, and you don't taste the sea, and you take it out before you, but it does the trick and reduces.
It reduces the gas, right?
Yeah.
So that combo, that stuff on the right, it's a sea vegetable. And when you throw it in when you cook beans, it degasses them a little bit. But also nori, like that stuff that your sushi is rolled up in. And they have the little nori snacks, which I actually really like, oddly. I like those. And plants from iodine-rich soil. But the thing is, they're saying, oh, our soil maybe isn't as great as it used to be. So I don't know. I take a multivitamin just to cover my iodine, just in case.
Sushi.
And just eat more sushi. And here's magnesium. Actually, Linda brought up the magnesium because I think it comes up a lot. We need 420 milligrams for men, 320 for women. This helps with our nerve and our muscle function, as many of these have, including our heart muscle. So that's why it comes up at this class. It helps with healthy bones. So I bet that calcium and vitamin D Rob's taken, I bet also has magnesium in it. And it helps our food that we digest to turn into calories. So, and diets rich in magnesium can help with metabolic syndrome, which is a cluster of things that lead to heart disease. And that cluster of things might be high triglycerides and low HDL and high blood pressure and abdominal obesity. And there's one more that's escaping me. Oh, high blood sugars. If you don't have enough, you might get muscle cramps. That's what people say when you say, oh, I have cramps. Oh, take a magnesium. Nausea and vomiting. If you take the wrong magnesium, you end up, you might take it for nausea, but you might end up with diarrhea too. So which mag citrate? Yeah, so got to be careful about which one you take. So we're more at risk if we're older, if we have GI problems, if we use a lot of alcohol, and if we have type 2 diabetes. So be careful, but the supplements might have a laxative effect. So check with your doctor which one you're supposed to have. And where are we going to get it? I think it's not hard to get enough magnesium. It's in nuts and seeds and whole grains and leafies. Isn't that what we've been talking about all day? So also last time I did this, it was COVID. So they were talking about nutrients to consider for COVID or if you had COVID. And one was to make sure you're getting enough D3. They found that people who had adequate D3 doubled their survival rate if they were in a nursing home. Vitamin C to help reduce your symptoms, zinc to help maybe with your taste and your smell, and help improve your immune system. I think that's supposed to also be under zinc. So now we don't have that so much to worry about. So if we want to get our micronutrients, we're just going to eat our foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and beans. Have a fruit and a vegetable at every meal. Have a whole grain at most meals. Have a protein at most meals. And if it's comes from plants, we're going to get plenty of our micronutrients. So here we go. It's just what we've been saying. Eat these multiple times a day. Vegetables, including your dark greens, fruits with skins, because a lot of the nutrients are closer to the skin or in the skin. Beans, lentils, peas, nuts and seeds, intact whole grains, meaning the whole real grain, not the processed grain, and herbs and spices. We're going to get plenty of micronutrients. And I think we're about out of time, so I might skip this because we've talked about it. But just think about what you're going to have this week. And maybe batch cook a few things. Make a pot of beans. Throw some combo in it. Maybe make a pot of grains. Maybe cut up your produce like this so it's all ready to go. I would just listen to somebody talk today about how they cut up their fruit so it's without the lid in the fridge. So when they open it, it's ready to go. More likely we're going to eat those things. And then we could, if we cook those things, we throw them all together like in one of these little power bowls. I know John hates the power bowl, but I love it because then I don't have to cook every night. Or you build a salad and you use all the things that you've made. And these are going to give us all our micronutrients. Soup, the same thing. You throw it all in a pot. This is a perfect time of year for it. And then you freeze what's left over. And you're throwing in your veggies and your beans and your seasonings. And then you always throw some greens in. And here was my recipe that we already talked about. Here's Gustavo Tolosa was his name. So it's just can of pineapple rings, sweet potatoes, applesauce, cherries if you want, and then you repeat your layers like you're doing a lasagna and you bake it for an hour. So do you think that recipe is a keeper? Yeah. So is it a dessert or is it a side dish? So if I was going to bring it to a potluck, what would I sign up for? Dessert or a side dish?
Put it between.
But in between. What? Oh, yeah, some ice cream. Yeah, I guess it depends on what you're serving it with, huh?
I put more spices in.
More spices?
Mm.
Oh, see, I was afraid I was so overdoing the spice.
We've been doing big spices.
Okay, I should have done more. Thank you for that feedback.
The cherries, though.
Keep the cherries?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Absolutely.
All right. I was really thinking I was just going to kill everybody with so much pumpkin spice and cinnamon, but now I'm glad to hear that feedback. Okay, thank you. All right.
Those cooking, the pumpkin.
Oh, no,
cooking,
I'm still waiting.
That's what pushed me over the edge.
John's got a great recipe for pumpkin cookies, which I think Carrie made for potluck.
Matter of balance.
There you go. So the food you eat can be the safest form of medicine or the slowest form of poison. So it's not always easy to do all this stuff. So remember your why. Why are you doing it? Because I want to take care of my diabetes, because I don't want to have a heart attack, because I want to get off my medicines, because I want to be here for my grandkids. Remember your why, and all your choices. Every time you put that fork up to your mouth should help you do something that will get you to reach your why. And I think
the same method that reverses disease prevents.
prevents it. That's true. That's true. The same thing we can do to prevent it. So eat as if your life depended on it. And this is a good holiday season to think about that. So sorry, we went a long time. I apologize for that. And thank you. Thank you. We did get a late start. We had some issues, but thank you, Leanne, for keeping me on track. Okay. So, and in a couple weeks, John and I are doing a demo of some sort, which we need to discuss.
Yeah, we should have a recipe for you.
Okay, so you don't want to miss it. So bye to you guys out in Zoom land. Thank you for joining in. And Vicky loved that picture. And you look really good in that top.
Also, if any of you want to try the cranberry oat balls,
Oh, I want a cranberry opal.
they're in a bowl up there. Yeah, they're in a
Okay,
bowl up there.
I want that.
They have balls.